The moment Frank walked into the office, I knew the dynamics were about to shift. He was tall, effortlessly commanding, his well-tailored navy suit hinting at the powerful physique beneath. But it wasn't just his looks that set him apart. It was that voice, deep, smooth, and intoxicating. The kind that sent shivers down my spine with the simplest of greetings. The women in the office whispered about him within days. The men watched him with a mix of admiration and envy. But me, I saw him as a challenge. I was used to being the one in control, the one who turned heads, who dictated the rules of engagement. Frank was no different, or so I thought. The party was buzzing, another corporate event filled with small talk, clinking glasses, and strategic networking. Frank, as expected, was the center of attention. He laughed easily, exuding confidence without arrogance. I played it cool, but every time he spoke, my pulse quickened. So when the night wound down and I casually offered to drop him home, I wasn't just being polite. I was securing my position, getting ahead of the inevitable queue of admirers. To my delight, he didn't hesitate. "Sure, that would be great," he said, flashing a smile that made my stomach tighten. Frank's apartment was exactly what I expected. Minimalist, modern, and expensive. "Coffee?" he asked, already moving toward the kitchen. I hid my excitement. "Sounds perfect." We talked. About work, about life, about cities we had both traveled to. The conversation flowed so easily, I felt like I had known him forever. His laughter was rich, his voice a melody that made me lean in closer than necessary. I knew what I was doing, the way I tilted my head, the way my fingers occasionally brushed against his wrist. I had mastered this dance long ago, and then it happened. The moment, the pause. I looked at him. He looked at me, a magnetic pull. I leaned in, and so did he. Our lips barely brushed, a whisper of a kiss, before he gently pulled away. His hand rested lightly on mine. "Joe," he murmured, his voice softer now, yet still powerful. "I need to tell you something." I tilted my head, confused. "What is it?" He exhaled, rubbing his jaw as if choosing his words carefully. "I think you're incredible," he said, "but I don't date women." The words hung between us, heavy and unexpected. I blinked. The reality hit me in waves, not interested. In me, in women. A million thoughts flooded my mind, but the loudest was disbelief. "But you..." I started, then stopped. He hadn't led me on. He hadn't promised anything. It was all in my head. He watched me cautiously, perhaps expecting anger or embarrassment. Instead, I laughed. A short, breathy laugh that came from sheer surprise. "Well," I finally said, picking up my coffee cup. "That's a first." His lips curled into a small smile. I figured I should be honest before I completely made a fool of myself. "I finished for him." He chuckled. "Something like that." I leaned back, studying him. The attraction was still there, but now it was something else entirely. I had chased him, certain that I knew how this would end. But Frank had rewritten the script. And for once, I wasn't disappointed. The moment I walked out of Frank's apartment, the night air felt different. Crisper, more intrusive. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind replaying the scene over and over again. I don't date women. It wasn't rejection in the conventional sense, but it still hit me somewhere deep, somewhere raw. I had been so certain, so confident that I could lure him in, like I had done with every other man before him. I had crafted the perfect game, the perfect allure. And yet, it hadn't been enough. I exhaled sharply and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My makeup was still perfect, my lips still glossed, but my eyes looked shaken. "God," I muttered, "what the hell just happened?" The next morning, I walked into the office with my usual poise, shoulders back, chin high, my black heels clicking against the marble floor. No one would know. No one would see the turmoil rolling inside me. I spotted Frank by the coffee machine, his deep voice filling the space. He was laughing with one of the interns, completely at ease. Something inside me twisted. Why does this bother me so much? I wasn't in love with him. I barely even knew him beyond polite conversation and late-night flirting. But still, I wanted to be the exception. I wanted to be the one who could turn his head, make him reconsider, make him want me. It wasn't even about him anymore. It was about me, my pride, my power, my ability to seduce, to captivate, to conquer. And for the first time in a long time, I had failed. Days passed, but the thought of Frank lingered. I found myself watching him, observing the way he moved, the way he spoke. I studied him like a puzzle, trying to see what I had missed, what I had failed to recognize. Was there ever a moment when I could have changed the outcome, or had I been chasing a mirage from the very beginning? Every interaction with him now felt heavier, charged in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with unspoken tension. I was drawn to him even more, as if trying to prove something to myself, that I was still irresistible, that I still had control. One evening, after a late client meeting, I found myself alone in the break room with Frank. The office was quiet. The world outside had grown dark. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, as he spoke about a new project. His voice, God, that voice, rolled over me like silk. I stepped closer, too close. "Tell me something, Frank," I said softly. "Has a woman ever made you question yourself?" His jaw tightened slightly, not in anger but in understanding. He exhaled. "Joe," I cut him off. "You don't have to answer." I reached for my coffee mug, our fingers grazing, and for a split second something flickered in his eyes. Not desire, not longing, but empathy. And somehow, that cut deeper than any rejection. The next day, I caught Frank's eye across the conference room. He gave me a small nod, a secret understanding passing between us. I smiled. The thrill of the chase had ended differently than I expected, but somehow, it felt like I had gained something far more valuable. Genuine connection, unfiltered honesty. I wasn't used to losing, but maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a loss at all.